advantage, which is important to today's times. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Let's talk about big data. A lot of companies struggle with big data, but before we get into just the big data conversation, like I said to you before we started recording, the whole point of this podcast is to make things easy for the person on the street.
100%. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes. So I'd love you to just explain to us what is big data, and secondly, what is data warehousing?
Okay. So yeah, it's an interesting fact. So if you think about, maybe I can break it down into two pieces. So what we call, you get two different types of data in majority. The first one would be transactional data. So if you think about it, is, say for example, your ERP system or your accounting system. So what happens is, when you're working in terms of your application, on a daily basis, you adding in an invoice, you putting in a PO, you tracking that people have paid you, all that information that you're capturing in a sheet or a form or whatever the case is going into a database. So it gets stored in a way that your application can use it whenever it does. So that's what we call transactional database. It's happening in real time. You're adding an invoice, you adding a new customer, you're sending out a quote. All that data is put into a way that can be stored in a way that you can retrieve it later. Then what happens is you get what you call analytical database. So analytical database is when you take that data that's transacting. So you can just imagine it's in real time. People are working on it, and it's adding and stuff like that. So it's not really good to be using that data to analyze it when it's happening in real time, because you can just imagine it's like trying to clean the tires on your vehicle when you're riding at 120 k's an hour. It's not optimal to do that. You want the wheel to be standing still so you can clean it. So what we do is then we take that data out and we put it into what you call a analytical database, and then you can put on analytical, or you can interrogate it, look what it's doing and stuff like that. So almost you want to separate between transactional and transactional and interrogating type of data. So the thing is, where big data comes in is, what you're doing is, say for example, you've got 20 different systems in your environment, and that's what happens a lot. So you've got an ERP system, you've got a CRM system, you've got these various different systems that because you can't really have one system that can do everything to you, because each system is designed differently, and it meets a different role. So what a lot of customers want to do is they want to take all these different data from different sources, and they want to push it into one place, or one single pane of glass where you can do it. So that would what we call a data warehouse. So you're warehousing all your data in one place, so that you can start aggregating the data around what you want to see. So because you've got information that comes from your CRM system, so lead management possibly, and you've got information that's running from your ERP system that's doing the invoicing and so forth, and you want to merge it and you want to put it together and say, okay, how many leads did I send out versus how many invoices I got? So then you can sort of interrogate data on an aggregated basis. So that's data warehousing in terms of that. So people want to bring all the information from the disparate systems into one place, so that they can start analyzing and finding nuggets of information. Because that's really what analytics is about, is finding those good, bad, and ugly stuff in your business, and saying, okay, well, who's the top? Who's the guy that I spend the most time on lead management and gives me the least amount of business? And basically start saying, well, using the Pareto principle and saying, oh, well, 80-20 split, let's rather focus on the guys that I spend 20% doing and getting 80% business with. Let's do that. So that's really what the data warehouse is about, is to bring all the data together so you can have one pane of glass of your customers and your operation and your business. So you can make good decisions with that. So that would be data warehousing. And then what big data is in the modern term is before, infrastructure was very limited, and what you had to do is you'd have to, and it was very expensive. With the starting of cloud and a lot of technologies today, cloud has become a lot cheaper, or infrastructure has become a lot cheaper. So now you can add additional layers of information to that data warehouse. And the bigger that gets, so you can start adding sensors, you can start adding some things that add a huge amount of data in real time. So if you think about it, like say, for example, your generator, it could be generating thousands of data points. What's its temperature? How much petrol it's using, and so forth. And you could have 1 million generators in your business, using example, but that generating of data is incredibly a lot of data. So that would be what we call big data. So there's newer technologies that can manage that sheer volumes of data and put it into some database and store it and be able to interrogate that data. So you can take data from all your systems, from all your sensors, from everywhere, and store it into some big data engine that can actually manage that data. Because that's the problem with data, is when it's small, it's easy to manage. When it's big, you want to be able to give it proper horsepower. So with the advent of a lot of technology, you're getting these type of databases or technology that can manage vast amounts of data and give you those insights around it, whether it be structured or unstructured data. So that's and I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Beautiful. So literally, big data is just a lot of data from different touch points, right?
100%, and feeding into technologies that can actually handle those huge amounts of data. So before, we didn't actually have technology that could handle sensory data type stuff. So think about your watches. You imagine the amount of data that's generated from everybody in South Africa on their watches into one. That would be big data. And Garmin is pulling it together and presenting it and so forth. So, there's a lot of use cases for big data, sensory type of data that can be stored and analyzed in real time.
Thank you so much for explaining that in very clear terms. Let's look at the best practices that businesses need to consider when it comes to data storage. What are the best practices?
Yeah, so because, like I said before, there's a lot of vendors that are starting or are offering these services in the market. So it's quite discerning. So we also have that same challenge, is like, where do we find these storages that meet our needs? And I think that's the first thing, is what is your needs around these storage capability, or outsourcing it. So the first thing to me is like, whenever I look at it, is about location. So a lot of database, or these hosters of cloud services or big storage, are in various different countries and stuff. So it's really about what type of data you're storing, where it's allowed. So a lot of organizations in South Africa are quite strict around where their data resides. So it might be that the type of data that you have needs to reside in the confines of South Africa, or in confines somewhere else. So the location of the databases or the data provider is very important. I think what is even more topical at the moment is security. I mean, have the guys got a track record? Where do they put the data? Do they have all the necessary positions or whatever in place that the data is safe and secure? I think that's very topical, and especially if it's data that's resourcing around people, names and account numbers, ID numbers. We've heard about a lot of data leaks that have happened. So it's really, what are the type of data and the security around it, if it's in a registered company that can actually make or give you some sort of guarantee around the safety of your data. And then I guess also it's around the type of data that you're going to store. Is it transactional data? What do you want to do with it? Is it just a storage oriented data, or do you want to interact with the data? You want to put some sort of like an OQLIS on top of it and in real time. So you need to understand what the performance that you want to have in terms of that. So if it's just storage, you can put low end stuff. If it's really want to be transactional, how is the technology around it, and what can it actually offer you? And I think